Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteus and you are watching The World Report. Let us take a look at some of the headlines. An arrest warrant has been issued for impeached South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol. The court warrant comes after Yoon's short-lived decision to impose martial law. Dozens of people have died in Gaza after strikes in the region and deadly cold conditions. Meanwhile, Israel's army has reportedly intercepted a missile coming from Yemen. American officials have accused Chinese state-sponsored hackers of breaking into systems at the Treasury Department. Labeled as a major incident, employee workstations and unclassified documents were allegedly accessed. Joe Biden has announced a multi-billion-dollar aid package for Ukraine. The announcement comes as hundreds of prisoners of war are swapped between Russia and Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine have exchanged hundreds of prisoners in a deal brokered by the UAE. 150 Ukrainian soldiers were swapped for an equal number of Russian troops. US President Biden announced nearly $2.5 billion in military aid to Ukraine. Here is the full report.
Russia and Ukraine have exchanged hundreds of prisoners in a deal brokered by the United Arab Emirates. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the swap of 150 Ukrainian soldiers for an equal number of Russian troops. Ukrainian President Zelensky reported that 189 Ukrainians, including key defenders from Azovstal, Mariupol, Chernobyl, and Snake Island, had returned home. The exchange was deeply emotional, marked with poignant moments as freed Ukrainians reunited with their loved ones in northern Ukraine. This was the 59th prisoner exchange since the full-scale war began and one of the biggest so far.
Ребят, я благодарю вас за службу, за терпение, за мужество, за то, что все перенесли. Мы очень рады, что наше Министерство обороны очень много работало за ваше возвращение. Наш президент очень переживал, и вы уже почти дома.
In addition to the prisoner swap, US President Biden announced nearly $2.5 billion in military aid to Ukraine. The funding includes $1.25 billion from the Presidential Drawdown Authority and $1.22 billion from the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen also revealed $3.4 billion in economic aid to support Ukraine's government and infrastructure amid the ongoing war. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We will now take a look at some news from the Indo-Pacific region. India's space ambitions soared on Monday with the launch of the PSLV C-60 rocket. The mission, called Spade X, aims to test docking technology in space. The two small satellites will demonstrate rendezvous, docking and undocking. This technology is vital for India's future human spaceflight and moon missions. India is now set to join the ranks of Russia, the US and China with this breakthrough. The country's space program has been growing rapidly, achieving major milestones at a fraction of the cost of global powers. Azerbaijan's prosecutor confirmed that Russia has pledged to identify and punish those responsible for the deadly plane crash on December the 25th. The crash involving an Azerbaijan Airlines flight killed 38 people. Russian authorities have not confirmed if their missiles caused the crash, but President Putin apologized to Azerbaijan's President Aliyev. The crash occurred in Russian airspace and Russia's investigative committee promised to take action. President Xi Jinping has announced more plans for a more proactive macroeconomic policies in 2024. Speaking at a top political advisory meeting, Xi acknowledged China's struggles with a property market crisis and weak consumption. Beijing has already implemented several measures, including interest rates cuts and easy home buying restrictions. However, economists warn more fiscal stimulus is needed to boost domestic consumption. China's official growth target of about 5% for 2023 remains at risk, with many economists predicting it will fall short. Severe snowstorms in Japan's northwestern region have led to dozens of flight cancellations as millions travel home for the new year. Japan Airlines cancelled 42 flights from Hokkaido, affecting over 6,000 passengers. NAA also scrapped 14 flights, impacting 800 travellers. Long lines formed at Hokkaido's main airport as passengers sought alternative flights. Both airlines warned of potential delays and further cancellations due to harsh weather. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has overseen the launch of plans for a new beachside resort. The resort is part of the Wonsan Karma development project in eastern North Korea. Kim called it a first big step in boosting tourism as the country reopens its borders. He expressed satisfaction with the resort's facilities designed to host key political and cultural events. Kim, accompanied by his daughter, toured the site, which analysts say is part of a key vision for his economic growth through tourism. A Philippine cargo ship sank in the San Bernardino Strait, killing one crew member and leaving two missing. The vessel, carrying 24 tons of cement, was hit by big waves off Samar Island. 11 crew were rescued overnight and another swam ashore after 25 hours in the water. A search for the missing continues while fishermen recovered one body near Biri Island. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has extended New Year's greetings to Russian President Vladimir Putin, praising their deepening ties. Kim expressed support for Russia's efforts in Ukraine and offered to push ahead with new joint projects. Meanwhile, Russia and Ukraine have exchanged over 300 prisoners of war. Let's take a look at the report.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has paid homage to Russian President Vladimir Putin in a New Year's message extolling deepening ties between Pyongyang and Moscow. In a letter to mark the new year, Kim extended his greetings to his dearest friend and comrade Putin, the Russian people and Russian military personnel. Kim wished Putin greater success in his responsible and heavy state leadership activities and the Russian people prosperity, well-being and happiness. Kim expressed willingness to design and push ahead with new projects involving Pyongyang and Moscow after their meaningful journey in 2024, and hoped that Russia would defeat neo-Nazism and achieve a great victory in Ukraine. Putin has claimed without evidence that his 2022 invasion of Ukraine was necessary to protect Russian speakers from a neo-Nazi dictatorship. North Korea and Russia have significantly ramped up ties since the start of the war. In June, Kim and Putin signed a mutual defense pact during the Russian leader's first visit to North Korea in nearly a quarter century. Pyongyang has since then sent more than 10,000 troops to assist Russian forces in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia and Ukraine have swapped more than 300 prisoners of war in an exchange brokered by the United Arab Emirates in advance of New Year's Eve, officials from both countries said. The Russian Ministry of Defense on Monday said it swapped 150 Ukrainian prisoners, while Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said 189 Ukrainians had returned home. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We will now take a look at some updates from the business world. ASEAN stocks slipped on Tuesday as investors grew cautious, scaling back hopes for major US rate cuts in 2025 and focusing on the incoming Trump administration. The dollar stayed strong while higher treasury yields weighed on stocks. MSCI's Asia Pacific Index fell 0.2%, China's CSI 300 stayed flat, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng rose 0.3%. A shareholder of Archer Daniels Midland is urging CEO Juan Luciano to step down over failure to address internal accounting issues linked to a criminal investigation. In a LinkedIn post, Hartwig Fuchs criticized Luciano, calling ADM his worst performing stock this year. Fuchs previously chaired Alfred C. Tofer International, which ADM fully acquired in 2014. Investor Bill Ackman expects President-elect Donald Trump to end Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's conservatorship, potentially making them private companies. Ackman predicts they could exit the conservatorship within 2 years and go public by 2026. Shares of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac rose 18.4% and 18% respectively, following his post on social media platform X. The US Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation has given BlackRock until January the 10th to agree to terms allowing increased scrutiny of its investments in FDIC-regulated banks. The FDIC recently reached a similar deal with Vanguard, aiming to enforce stricter rules for passive investment in these banks. The agreements, known as passivity agreements, are part of ongoing efforts to monitor asset managers' influence on these institutions. The US Justice Department filed a complaint against Dave Inc. It also announced a civil enforcement action against CEO Jason Wilk for allegedly federal law violations. The Justice Department and Federal Trade Commission alleged that the company misled users with ads offering cash advances up to $500, which many never received. The complaint seeks consumer redress, civil penalties, and a permanent injunction to prevent future violations. The US Treasury Department has accused a China-based hacker of breaching its security and accessing unclassified documents. The hack, viewed as a major incident, was carried out through a third-party service provider. China has denied the allegations, calling them groundless. Here is the report.
According to official reports, a Chinese state-sponsored advanced persistent threat apt hacker broke into the US Treasury Department's computer security guardrails earlier this month and was able to access employee workstations and some unclassified documents. The Treasury Department viewed the breach as a major incident after disclosing it via a letter notifying lawmakers of the incident. The US agency said it has been working with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and third-party forensic investigators to probe the potential impact of the hack. The Treasury Department said that the hackers was able to override security via a key used by a third-party service provider, Beyond Trust, which provides remote technical support. Additionally, the department made no specifications on the nature of the files or the location and duration of the hack. They also did not mention the level of confidentiality of the systems or the seniority of the staff whose materials were accessed. China, on the other end, has denied any involvement, calling the accusation baseless.
对于此类缺乏证据的无端指控，我们已经多次表明了立场。中方一贯反对各种形式的黑客攻击，我们更反对出于政治目的散布针对中国的虚假信息。
A Chinese embassy spokesperson in Washington, D.C. dismissed any responsibility and said that the accusation was part of a smear attack and made without any factual basis. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We will now take a look at some news updates from North America. 3 suspects were arrested in connection with the death of a Mexican migration agent who was found earlier that day with no vital signs. This was cited by the state security and migration officials. The agent, who had suffered a head injury and signs of violence, was discovered in northern Chihuahua. The killing is a rare case of violence against agents, coming weeks before a potential immigration crackdown under US President-elect Donald Trump. Cuba released on Monday a Salvadorian man, Raul Ernesto Cruz Leon, after he served 30 years in prison over a wave of 1997 hotel bombings. Cruz Leon was arrested in September 1997 and confessed to carrying out 6 bomb attacks that targeted hotels, one of which killed an Italian tourist. He was sentenced to death in 1999. Cuba's Supreme Court commuted the sentence in 2010 to a 30-year jail term. Mexican authorities have recovered 31 bodies from 25 clandestine graves in Chiapas, an area heavily affected by cartel violence. The bodies, 29 male and 2 female, were found over the weekend and Monday. This was done as part of an operation to restore stability in the Frail Chesca region, where rival cartels have been clashing. Guantanamo Bay inmate Rida bin Saleh al-Yazadi has been repatriated to Tunisia after being deemed eligible for transfer. According to the US Department of Defense, this was followed after a rigorous interrogatory review process. The Pentagon did not confirm whether Yazadi accepted any guilt. He had been held since 2002, but was never formally charged. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with Venezuelan opposition leaders Eduardo Gonzalez Ochoa and Marina Corina in Machado on Monday. He offered support ahead of the next presidential term starting January the 10th. The call comes after a controversial July election, where the opposition claims their candidate defeated Nicolas Maduro, sparking widespread protests across the country. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada is investigating whether debris found on the runway at St. John's International Airport is linked to an Air Canada flight. The flight had caught fire after landing at Halifax Stansted International Airport on Saturday night. Officials closed the St. John's runway after debris was discovered. Amid escalating tensions in the region, the Israeli military intercepts a missile from Yemen, while the situation worsens in Gaza and the West Bank. Meanwhile, reports of civilian casualties and attacks on hospitals continue to raise international concern. Here is a report.
The Israeli military has intercepted a missile fired from Yemen, preventing it from entering Israeli territory, a move that heightens tensions in an already volatile region.
نفذت القوة الصاروخية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية عمليتين عسكريتين نوعيتين. الأولى استهدفت مطار بن غوريون التابع للعدو الإسرائيلي في منطقة يافا في فلسطين المحتلة، وذلك بصاروخ باليستي فرط صوتي نوع فلسطين 2. العملية الأخرى استهدفت محطة الكهرباء جنوبي القدس المحتلة.
In the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces stormed the town of Al-Qaeda, south of Bethlehem, further escalating the situation. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the United Nations has condemned the Israeli military's attacks on hospitals, including the tragic disabling of Kamal Adwan Hospital. The facility, once a lifeline for many, is now rendered non-operational, leaving thousands without essential medical care amidst the ongoing violence. Amidst the destruction, the fate of Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, the head of Kamal Adwan Hospital, has drawn international concern. His family reports that he is suffering in SDE Taiman Israeli military prison, where he has been detained following the storming of the hospital by Israeli forces. The Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian Prisoners Society confirmed the deaths of 5 Palestinians in Israeli detention. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes on Jabalia, north of Gaza City, killed 4 civilians and wounded several others. Gaza's health ministry reports 27 killed and 149 wounded in the last 24 hours, with the ongoing violence intensifying the region's suffering. Bureau Report, NewsX.
And that's all we have time for. We will be back soon with more of the latest news from across the world.